Hello, this is Howard Klein. I'm an attorney, been practicing a long time, and today we're going to be talking about the CRE evolution with Jonathan Schultz. Jonathan and I have known each other somewhere between 7 and 10 years. So, if you will, I would like to mention that John has a great blog called www.johnschultz.com. I certainly recommend that you go to that. Also, if you like what you hear, please hit the subscribe button, whether you're watching this on Facebook or YouTube. So let's kind of go right into this and let's introduce Jonathan. Jonathan, hello, welcome.
How are you? I'm glad to be here with you, Howard.
Well, super. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Wow. How long do we have?
Uh, I'm going to give you 10 seconds. All right,
All right.
time's up.
Good.
Let's go on.
There you go. So, well, thanks for having me. Always great chatting with you. Love your energy. So glad to be on your show. Yeah, and my name's John Schultz. I'm in real estate. I am a co-founder and managing principal of Onyx Equities. We are a investment firm, an operator and investor of commercial properties predominantly. So we invest in industrial, office, retail, but not so much right now. We have some retail assets. And we're also doing some residential development on the sites that we had extra land, being that, we're trying to make more of a live, work, play environment in the suburbs, actually. So that's what we do in real estate. As far as technology investing, I am an early stage Series A investor in predominantly real estate property tech, but have ventured out into other verticals, a little bit of healthcare, consumer tech, and then looking at other verticals as things change so rapidly in the world that we're living in today, which it is at the speed of light and more and faster than I've ever seen it, actually. So it'll be an interesting next 5 years based on just all the change that's occurring today.
So, why don't we start with this? You wanted to talk about mindset, and we are in the middle of a pandemic. So, why don't you tell me what it is about mindset that interests you so much?
Well, fortunately, I've had two terrific parents that had tremendous positive mindset. And they really did help me through my entire life to keep my mind on a path that actually serves me. And thank God. I mean, we're living in a tragic, chaotic, unbelievable time right now with this pandemic. And, if you listen back to some of the broadcasts where we all thought this was going to be over in 3 weeks, obviously that's not the case. And we're still heavily dealing with this. And boy,
Let me interrupt you a second. I'm
yeah,
not going to give myself a pat on the back, but if you saw some of my webinars back in March, excuse me, I was never thinking that this would be a 3 week or even a 3 month pandemic. Everything told me that this was going to be longer than what many people were thinking.
well, if you go back and look at history, Howard, from all the things that as our country experienced, you're right. But like when you're going through anything, you always want to hope that it won't last as long as it's lasting now. And listen, it was so no, we've never gone through something as a society like this. Think about this. There was wars and plagues, and if you just look back in history, most generations went through some crazy event, right? That changed what and how they thought, changed the trajectory of what went on during that time. And at least if you're 60 and under, you really haven't gone through that crazy event. And now we're going through that crazy event. So, my kids who are obviously younger will now have that in their brain moving forward throughout the trajectory of their life. And it shapes you, it changes you, it creates you. And I guess mindset is how, I guess, you can get through this in a way that's positive or negative. And, all of us have gone through such traumatic stress and unknowns, and just, not being comfortable and not knowing what the next thing was going to be. And where's the light at the end of the tunnel? And, my parents taught me that, you're allowed to feel what's going on, but, you have to have a positive mindset to get through it. And you got to look at the gratitude as well, right? Like I've never learned more about how grateful I really am in my
So
life,
true.
and how fortunate I am, and how lucky I am, and blessed that I am to have friends, family, health, the ability to actually figure out how to get through this. And unfortunately, there's also been a lot of, the other way in this, where, there obviously this is a terrible, tragic situation for families. And, I can't stress that enough, right? Like, this is a real thing that we're all going through. And unfortunately, some people are feeling it in a lot of other ways that, others aren't. So can't take it for granted. And, for me, when I say mindset, what I've done more of during this pandemic is learn what gratitude is and why I'm grateful. I also learned what I do want to do and what I don't want to do. And it allowed me to really reflect on my life and what that is moving forward. So it'll be exciting to see how that all plays out.
The gratefulness part of it is something that is so very, very important to my wife and I. We see a lot of things going on, but, uh, we have our daughter who's just in August got her master's in 3D digital art, but she's living at home. She can't find a job. And frankly, there's a little bit of woe is me from her in that. And I'm going, you should be grateful. You've got a roof over your head. You don't have to worry about food. My wife and I are so grateful. Our business, yes, last year it dipped a little bit, but frankly, towards the end of the year, and now it's in a upward trajectory. Part of
Yeah.
this and the mindfulness I think that you're talking about is not only being grateful, accepting the conditions as they are, and problem solve and figure out how to move forward. And not everybody has that mindset or that ability.
Listen, it's very uncomfortable trying to be comfortable. So, that statement has been embedded in me through lots of my mentors over the years, that, most of your growth comes from adversity and issues, that when things are going well is not when you learn your greatest lessons. And no one wants to learn the lessons sometimes as hard as they are feeling and happening. But, if you get through them, you will be stronger. And I'm old enough to know now that I've been through some of my own lessons in my life to know that that actually is a true statement. When you're young, it's very hard to believe and understand and feel that. And it's up to, and that's why I believe so much in mentors. And I don't mean just a work mentor. I mean, just people through your lives that you say, wow, like, what's their energy? How do they have that energy? I like to be surrounded by people that give me energy and give me hope and give me creativity. And the more that I'm around that, the more I get tidbits of, what they're thinking and doing. And then that helps me shape my life, right? I'm not copying what they're doing, but it gives me such great information to then use for my experiences and what I want to do to propel myself in life, along with the people that are around me. And this epidemic has taught you how to be if you wanted it to be, right? And that's the thing. And I'm sure there's, worse situations that other people are feeling than me. So again, I'm not saying or telling anyone how to do this or how to be this, but from my own experience, the more that I've reflected and the more I've gotten comfortable being uncomfortable, I'm actually learning a new skill. And I think in business, my best deals were when I let go, when I said, okay, if it happens, if it's meant to be, it'll happen. The ones that I push and grinded, usually didn't end up the way they should have ended up. So, patience and knowing that, what will happen is supposed to happen. I think I've learned a lot during this time, more than I ever have.
Yeah, don't you wish that you can learn the easy way? I suppose sometimes you can. And I've always told my kids, I said, it just seems like the things that I learned best have been during difficult times. And I wish, I could learn something, and occasionally I do, when I just kind of get lucky. And that does happen. All of a sudden, oh, okay, wow, look at that. I learned that. But life just generally doesn't work that way. And I appreciate now, after going through the difficult times, I appreciate my failures, my mistakes, and the opportunities that I have gotten because of my struggles.
Well, this is a mindset trick that I use. And it's not easy to do it or be it. It takes practice. If you actually believe, good or bad, that life is for you, and the good and the bad are all lessons to propel you to what you need to do next, and you actually truly try to make your mind believe that even when things aren't going well, they don't feel good, that like, what's the lesson in that? Like, what am I supposed to be learning? Because this feels really hard, right? I think that will make what you said by why does it always have to learn hard, not be as hard. But you got to practice that when things don't go your way. It's not necessarily not for you. It may be that you have to pivot, or maybe you have to look at things in a different way and think about something in a different way. We get very robotic with how we want to do things because we feel comfort as creatures with a roadmap, with like, this will lead to this, will lead to this, will lead to this. And we get stuck in that because, our ego is always wanting to protect us from going off that path. So the minute that path starts getting swervy or angly or all different directions in the way, unlike that we want it to go, we get a little freaked out. So I think that's helped me look at things differently. That's helped me be more relaxed. I also think, when you don't think that way, you get in fight or flight. And the minute you get in fight mode, you cannot think as clearly. It's impossible to be scared and creative at the same time. So it's almost like we're not giving ourselves enough chance to get through it. And listen, there's all levels of what you go through that can feel horrible. And I get it. And sometimes you're like, how is that a lesson? And I don't know. I've looked back a lot in my life at those things and said, wow, that was a lesson. And thank God it happened, even though it really didn't feel so good at that time. But as I'm changing how I deal with my mindset on these things by thinking things can be for me, even though they don't look or feel good, it's getting me through those situations faster, less dwell, less stress, and less anxiety. And like, the goal is to try to feel as free and as good, and happy as you possibly can, as long and as much as you can. And I guess that's where mindset and just, practicing that comes in.
We could probably talk about mindset for the next couple of hours, and I can give you examples. But one of the things I'd like to, since we're in the middle of a pandemic and you have so much knowledge and experience in commercial real estate technology, I'd like you to give me your thoughts about the adoption of technology in the commercial real estate space during the pandemic. And then maybe we'll talk about, what's going to go on a going forward basis.
Well, there's two ways to look at this, right? There's the only reason why a real estate deal is successful is your tenant. and the companies that actually occupy your spaces, right? We're creating environments for people to either go on a trip, shop, work, and with industrial, distribute and make and manufacture. And I think there's large companies, small and medium-sized companies. What I think has been a big sea change is the mid and small sized companies that been practicing technology, and we're all trying to keep up with all the new efficient ways to work and do our businesses. But I think the adoption of cloud, the actual going into the cloud, which you can see AWS, Microsoft Azure, Google, all of these companies' earnings in that sector have been skyrocketing. All the large companies have been, I would think, a much faster adopter. But what it did, the pandemic forced everyone to be mobile. Like all this mobile conversation and digital transformation that all of us have been talking about is real. But in any change, because no human really wants to change, a lot of people are, have to be forced to change. And the real estate industry, I think, has been one of those industries that needed the force, right? It wasn't like an early adopter in how to change. But now the entire ecosystem of tenants are now in the cloud. That changes everything. That allows you now to actually have your data in a place where machine learning, AI, all the things that we're seeing these large companies focus on, from robotics and, big manufacturing facilities, right? And all the things that I think our economy is going to grow to. It gives now a much bigger piece of the population of the tenant, being small and mid-sized companies, to actually take part in this. It's amplified it. It's put it 3-4 years faster, 5 years faster in my mind, on how now everyone can take part in what digital transformation actually means. So I think that's exciting. So that's on the, I guess, digital infrastructure side. The other side is obviously now, we're 11 months, 10 months into this thing, and, we own a lot of office buildings, and, we own shopping centers, and just, how are you going to deal with keeping your tenants feeling safe, happy, and wanting to come back to, whether it's bars or restaurants or the office, is going to be what our entire community has to rally around. And, we've been doing a lot of, thinking about that. And, from, health and safety technologies now, it's not just, how do you enter the building with an app, or how do you order food on an app? Now it's like, how is your air conditioning, system? How do I see that looks clean and healthy? How do I get in elevators and, from touchless technology? How do I go into a bathroom? Is there too many people in there? So I think the way building owners have to think, which I think we've become hoteliers as office building owners over the last 10 years, way more than office building owners. It's, now it's a unique experience for everyone in the building, not just who signs the lease, right? Once you sign the lease 10, 15 years ago, you just kept the building clean, kept the bathrooms clean, kept the parking lots clean. Obviously you would try to make it a beautiful environment, but all these amenities that now you're putting in that are both physical and digital wasn't even a part of our ecosystem. And I think the residential market pushed that, right? I think the millennial and Gen Z is forcing this, which we all know in so many different ways now today. It's incredible. And as owners, we have to be on the forefront of that. So I feel the health and wellness amenity is going to be a very important amenity. So people feel, because you can't use all those other things unless you're in the building. And that's what we're focused on. And we're very excited that we're going to be able to create those environments.
Yeah, I can recall it was about 5 years ago. I did a webinar on healthy buildings. Had a couple of guests on, and it got moderate traction, so to speak. But now I'm thinking in terms of, okay, there's going to be significant focus on healthy buildings as an amenity. So Class A buildings, what we have seen since 9/11, a transition in Class A buildings to security. I mean, if you're in New York and you want to get into a Class A building, security is super high. That's an amenity. It's one of the things that a tenant pays extra for. Now I think this is going to be a 9/11 type event where health and wellness will become an amenity. So having a gym in the building won't be anywhere near as important unless it's considered a health amenity. It won't be as important as how healthy the building is. And you'll see that in Class A buildings, in my
And that's
opinion.
what, listen, like the turnstile was created, right, for that security moment. Going to the airport, you still have to take your shoes off until you get clear or TSA passes, right? So, and think about how many years it took to even get that to change a little bit. So we're going to have infrastructure and structural changes that now people think and feel they need in buildings and hotels and all the different real estate products that we all live, eat, work, and play in. And but the other thing we have to think about, right? We will have that residual impact, but the vaccines here, hopefully over the next 6 to 9 months, we're going to see a real change that will make us not to have this gigantic long-term change for maybe a short term. And when I say short term, it could be a year and a half, 2 years, whatever it takes for us to funnel through all this, which we will. We'll get through it. We're all resilient. We'll figure it out. Hopefully it will be like that, where I think it'll be a little bit bigger than 9/11 as far as security. I think there's going to be more to this. There's more moving pieces, but I think we'll get through it, and we're going to have a difference in how we go to work and how we occupy spaces, and it's all one big experiment. And now we have a new addition to the big experiment, because I think we were an experiment anyway, right? Like now this is just adding another piece to it, which is fine. This is what you have to do.
It's interesting. I went through an experience yesterday, which I'm going to mention. But one of the things that I think we should be grateful for, and we're fortunate during this pandemic, is that the technology that has landed on the doorstep for most people in the business world, Zoom, for example. You and I have been involved in technology for quite a long time, probably much longer than other people. We've had a strong interest in it. But we've seen the transition from very clunky technology that people weren't adopting because it was clunky to something like Zoom or Microsoft Teams, et cetera, where, granted, there are still technology issues, but it's pretty easy for normal people to hop on. Yesterday, and I was going through this because we're going to transition into what's going to happen in the future. Yesterday, I had a virtual court appearance for a case management conference. I have my law office in Laguna Niguel, California. A lot of the work I do in Orange County and San Diego County and LA County. I live in Las Vegas, and this hearing was a Zoom conference in a court in Sonoma County, which is all the ways up north, right,
Yeah.
of California. And while I'm going through this, I'm going, the court's handling this. This is so easy. And then I started thinking, well, when the pandemic is over, are they just going to ditch this? Because it's so easy that really, I think that this is going to be part of the framework, certainly for lawyers who make court appearances, but I think that's going to be in a lot of the things that we do. So, are we going to have to buckle up and put on our seatbelts and what is it that you see in the future?
Well, it's funny, you're mentioning this. I actually know some friends of mine that buy companies that have bought and sold companies over the last 11 months and never have physically met the people they either bought the company from or sold the company to. That would have never happened. Okay. So just like the turnstile would have never happened, right? You would have, but like, you remember running through the airport and your parents,
Oh gosh.
coming to the gate with me, like all that changed, right? So you're going to see these changes that I don't think change back now. Everyone's going to do it differently, and there's no one solution. And guess what? Technology is tools. So I don't think we ever get away from the humanness of being around each other, collaborating. My best light bulb moments have been in a room or at a dinner or at a function, just chit chatting about nothing. And then all of a sudden something came up out of nowhere. And that was either my best deal, one of my best relationships, or people that I've met. And I don't want that not to happen in my life. So I'm going to make sure I continue to do that. But will I have to run to every meeting now? And again, that's getting back to the do or not to do list that I said when we were talking about mindset. There's definitely going to be a more discerning look on how I spend my time, because right now I feel tools that I knew were there, but were not mainstream, that are now mainstream. And when anything becomes mainstream, it could be a tool in your toolkit, and it's just something or another way that you can do something. Now, some people that never really wanted to go out or be around people or see people, this could be their life stream. They may conduct their business in a way that they never could, and you may never see them again except on a screen. I don't see that for most of the companies and how companies do business. I think it's going to be a more discerning choice on how you conduct your business, because you actually have the tools, right? We have the mobility, we have the ability to actually do it in a different way. And you'll have a choice. And depending on the company, what you do, how you do it, you will make that choice. For me, the minute I can get in a meeting without having to wear a mask and be around people and see people smile, I feed off energy. Like I want to be around energy. That's what makes me my most creative, and that's where I have the most fun. So for me, I can't wait for it to I know it's going to be different, right? And I know that I'm even going to make different choices, but I'm ready for it to go back to a little bit more of the way it was.
A little bit of history. All right. I go back a ways, longer than you, I think. I certainly have whiter hair.
There you go.
But back in the mid 80s, I used to, and this is how technology has changed in how we've adopted from it. In the mid 80s, I would negotiate leases all over the country. And the way that I usually did it, and I represented, I was general counsel for a company that had locations all throughout the United States. And the way that I did it is I would travel to the location, find the location, contact the landlord, and then we would start the same process, do an LOI. The landlord would send me a lease. We'd negotiate the lease, except back in the mid 80s, it was a little bit different than the way I had done it previously. So, what we would do is the landlord would FedEx a lease to me. I would send it out to be scanned. I couldn't scan it in my office, it didn't have the capability of doing that. I switched from a program called Multimate to WordPerfect because WordPerfect allowed me to create a red line draft. So it cost me $100, and they would mail it a 5.25 inch floppy disk for me to put into my computer, and then I'd make the changes, and then I would mail the changes out to the landlord that had a red line. So instead of having a 30-page addendum saying change this on this line, they could see exactly the changes that I wanted all in one document. And then we would do that process. And then in order to complete the deal, I would fly out. I had a portable computer. I was one of the few people who did at the time. And then we'd make the changes. I'd give them the floppy disk. They print it out. Boom. We would sign the deal. Half the time I traveled. So out of 50 weeks, I was probably traveling 25 weeks in order to close these deals. That has all been changed now. You can scan. I have a scanner. I had to show it, right next to me. You probably do too. Word is now the predominant word processor. It's all done online. And then some of it we have video because you don't really need it for stuff like that. But it has just, the world has changed so much. And I imagine that over the next, so when did I start doing that in the mid 80s? So that's like almost 30 years, almost 40 years. So say 30 to 35 years. What do you see now?
I think
What
we're
do you
going to have
see?
more change. We're going to have more change in the next 5 years than we have over the last 50 years. I think Moore's law is on steroids when it's going to come to change. And I think we better get ready for that. So, buckle your seatbelts can mean a couple things. It can mean, change or, I don't know where, it's going to be tough for you. Right. And then also buckle your seatbelts for like almost a roaring 20s like change in how people are going to want to come together once this feels safe. I feel it's way more than we're gonna know, because I feel everyone misses just that everyday thing, walking down the street, saying hello to someone, calling someone, say, I'll meet you over at, whatever, your favorite restaurant for a drink and an appetizer or dinner, going to a game, going to a Broadway show. I happen to love Broadway. I mean, I haven't gone in so long. I'll probably go every 2 weeks once this thing kicks back in. Because first of all, I want to support everyone who's been going through this in a way that had it, probably worse, right? From the restaurants that are suffering, the entertainment venues that are suffering, Broadway, the movie theaters, all the things that I can't wait to go out and support them in a huge way when they are able to be supported, right? Plus, I miss, the world was like, everyone was talking about experiences, like life's about experiences. Those all got shut down. We haven't been able to live our experiences. What do you remember in life most? I remember, the trips, the functions I've gone to where I had a great time. I went to a new restaurant. I met some new people. I mean, most of the energy that comes from the fun things that I do is from these experiences that have been shut down for now a long, long time. So I'm very looking forward for however we're going to do it differently. Because the one thing you got to learn about, like, your past and just, we don't want to change. When we're forced to change, we try to change, but we also got to be open to how much it really will change, right? Because we put our little box around what we think is going to happen. And sometimes we, like an ostrich, we put our heads in the sand a little bit too much. We are in a dynamic shift. We are in a huge change that's been amplified and I think accelerated. So you can't be too stuck in your old ways. Even though you might have a premonition it's going to go back to a certain way, we all don't really know yet what that means. So you got to also be open to, if it's not exactly the way you thought it would be, how are you going to adjust? How are you going to pivot? Just like any startup, right? Most of the products that I've invested in that are early stage aren't the products of what they were when they started. I would say 99.9% are a completely different product because it took a long time to find out the need. We don't truly know what the new needs are and how that's all going to affect everything that we do. But I'm looking forward to, in the challenge, to figuring it out. And I think it's going to accelerate once we're allowed to actually figure that out. So we're going to, all the stuff that we've been planning and trying to move forward, I think it's going to move forward in a very big, impactful way.
Before we get to the final question, I'd like to add something. In first, I'm a person who does enjoy change. Um, but what I've learned in nearly everything that I've done, when I've coached basketball, when I've gone to court, I've done a lot of live theater. When you prepare for being on a live stage, when I do things like this, to me, it's all about preparation. That I prepare so much so that when you are in the position to do something like this, or if you're in an early stage production, if you dot your I's, cross your T's, and you prepare yourself to the nth degree, you have the ability, your mind is open to be able to deal with the unexpected and you can move forward. And to me, that's what it's all about. I've been to court where I have been so prepared, knowing that it is likely something's going to happen that I didn't expect, no matter how prepared I am, and that I'm able to deal with it because my mind's not dealing with it. When you're involved in sports, all of the practice that you do is so that during the live game, you don't have to think about the regular stuff. You can think about the moment. And I
Well,
think
listen,
that a
just
lot
like,
of
but
this is
just
about.
like you, yeah. Well, Howard, if we really want to go deep in this topic, it never goes the way we think. So,
No,
like,
it
so
doesn't.
if like it goes in the direction of how we're thinking, but I can't tell you how many times I'm wrong on how I think it's truly going to go, and it doesn't mean that it's not going to go in a great way. It may actually be better, right? Because it sort of allowed itself to move around and go in the direction it should go in. But and that's again, that's the journey, that's the fun. And when you say prepared, I look at it as like I love reading, learning, asking people questions, finding out about what they know. I always want to be the person in the room not talking, but listening to what people have to say. I feel like I'm
So
talking
true.
too much on this already today, but that's, I guess, what my role is here today on your show. But I tell you, like, prepared is about learning how to learn and learning to know that you really don't know exactly the way it's going to go. So be open to that, whatever pressure, resistance, whatever you want to call it, and know that it's just about time of how you're going to get there. I always think that if you believe in anything, it's not if, it's when. And during the point from if to when, it's just this open book of not knowing, right? We all look smart after, but any entrepreneur or the most successful people that I talk to and ask them questions always told me, you know what? It wasn't exactly the way we thought it was going to go, but we got there, right? I can't tell you how many times I've heard that. And that's just, once you have that mindset, it'll make things a little easier to get through it. And that's all
what
we're here to do.
what a perfect segue, and we've come full circle. You're right. It's all about mindset. That's where it starts, and that's where it ends.
It is. It is. And it's practice. It's like any
Yes.
sport or anything that you're good at, right? Practicing gratitude, practicing how you think, how to keep clear, how to keep creative, right? You want your mind open so that idea will come in, or that conversation. If you're aggravated and uptight, you're not going to hear what's, going on around you. So I think it's so important. But listen, it's easy to say, and it takes practice to do it well.
Yeah, and you and I think that way because we've been doing it a long time, and we didn't do it when we were younger, or at least to
No,
the extent that we do it now.
not even close.
Isn't that true? Well, Jonathan, do you have anything else to add?
Listen, I think you're doing a great thing for people here. Because if one person listens to this and gets that idea or gets that creativity flowing to do something different in their lives, then that's such a great thing to be a part of. So I think what you're doing is tremendous. And I can't thank you enough for having me to be part of your show. So thank you.
And I highly recommend that if you're watching this, you go to Jonathan's blog. And Jonathan, how do people get to that again?
It's johnschultz.com, JONSCHULTZ.com. And yeah, I write about technology, culture, a little bit of mindset. You know, I enjoy doing it. I love trying to share what I've learned, and a lot of it's just coming from all my mentors and the people that I have access to that have enabled me to feel that I can move forward in my life in a positive way. So, however I can share that makes me happy.
Yeah, this is not a just CRE type blog. I highly recommend it for anyone who likes to think and learn.
Well,
So,
thank you.
Jonathan, thank you very much. Hopefully, sometime in the near future, we will have the opportunity to get together in person.
Oh,
It's
we're
been a
going to.
while. Yeah.
We're going to. There's not even a question. I can't wait for all that again. So
Oh,
looking
isn't
forward.
that true? Jonathan, you take care. And for anybody, if you liked what you had seen and heard on this, don't forget to subscribe and hit the button to get the most recent videos that I do. Jonathan, you take care, stay safe, and be healthy. Bye bye.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
You bet.